As we've discussed previously, masculinity is a social construct that describes the roles, behaviors, and attitudes that society expects or considers, quote, appropriate for men and boys.
We use words like honor, code, loyalty.
No mercy.
I'm not here to say please. I'm here to tell you what to do.
The term traditional or hegemonic masculinity was coined in the late 80s to help explain how patriarchal societies teach men and boys to maintain their power, such as by consciously suppressing and unconsciously repressing emotions like fear, anxiety, grief, guilt, disappointment, embarrassment, and shame, while defaulting to anger and aggression.
You can act like a man! What's the matter with you?
जो मर्द होता है उसे दर्द नहीं होता मेम साहब.
Traditional or hegemonic masculinity insists that all emotions apart from anger are signs of weakness, which isn't just ideologically stupid, it ironically has the opposite effect on men. It makes them weak, unable to handle things not going their way. And interestingly, traditional masculinity encourages men to practice these same tenets in romance situations by aggressively pursuing a love interest, and then perpetually trying to dominate or diminish their partner by being selfish, insensitive, and angry. And it's like, where's the logic in any of this? Why are you in a relationship if you're not going to be loving toward the other person? Relationships are about being vulnerable and selfless. You cannot be self-centered and emotionally stoic and then expect to experience or receive love. It makes no sense to me. But traditional masculinity doesn't want men to experience love. It only wants to keep them in power, at the expense of their humanity. And throughout its history, Indian entertainment has regularly presented male characters who exhibit creepy, toxic behaviors in relationships and glorify them as manly and romantic. But it's just not true. Patriarchy tries to convince men that traditionally masculine behaviors in romance are aspirational, when in practice, they make men fragile and impair their ability to experience and express love. In contrast, when Indian male characters exhibit gentleness and sensitivity in romance, I don't think male viewers look up to them for this, because men aren't proactively taught to recognize these qualities as strengths when they are. Exhibiting gentleness in any relationship requires inner strength predicated on patience, discipline, empathy, awareness, and emotional resilience, to name a few. In the film Sanam Teri Kasam, Inder's inner strength isn't immediately obvious, but I believe it's the true foundation for his fortitude, masculinity, and capabilities in love. At his surface, he appears to reinforce concepts of traditional hegemonic masculinity, such as physical brawn and emotional stoicism. But the film dismantles this impression fairly early by demonstrating Inder's gentle demeanor, kindness, and willingness to help others. Most notably his neighbor Saraswati, or Saru for short. Now that's not to say Inder's perfect. He gets angry and aggressive sometimes, which isn't something I recommend modeling, but he's rarely like that. Most of the time he's calm, soft-spoken, and patient. In those ways he's similar to Saru, which is funny because they look so different. He's tall, tattooed, and muscular. She's slight, bookish, and petite. Their physical contrast is especially stark when Saru accidentally gets high after drinking bhang laced with cannabis. She's running all over the place, Inder has to keep checking to make sure she's safe, and during the song, she's constantly falling into his arms and against his chest, and she looks really small compared to him. It's really cute. But anyway, I think Sanam Teri Kasam uses Inder to comment on positive ways that men can behave in 3 classic romance situations where previous male characters have often failed. To start off, Indian and South Asian cinema and television have a long history of depicting male characters who initiate romantic interest, usually toward a woman, and the woman rejects it. And the man typically doesn't regard her no seriously, but rather as a small obstacle in a pursuit that will ultimately end in his favor. So he tries again, and again, and again in the name of love, and it usually works. If, however, she somehow embarrasses or offends him at some point, he might get angry or violent because he doesn't know how to deal with his emotions. It's so important to learn how to do this, not just in love, but in life. Inder, on the other hand, handles the concept of no wonderfully. We find out at the end of the film that Inder had been passing little notes to Saru in his library books, expressing his interest in her. It was such a gentle method, which I love. And when he doesn't get a response, he assumes the answer is no and backs off.
तुमसे मिले 27 दिन 9 घंटे हुए हैं, पर तुमने कोई जवाब नहीं दिया.
So I guess no thank you है. But कभी भी mood बदले तो call me.
The easeful language in his note reveals that he has sufficient emotional resilience and self-esteem to process these kinds of situations. I mean, he's disappointed, as one would be, but it's all good. In contrast, traditional masculinity would encourage a man to bury his hurt feelings and get even to avenge his insult. But I think you can observe that this is a symptom of insecurity.
No one ever says no to try Walker.
I believe I just did.
Patriarchy doesn't encourage men to witness feelings like shame or insecurity because it wants to convince men that even having these feelings detracts or negates their masculinity. But it's not true. So I urge you, don't run away from these emotions. Allow yourself to have them, grieve your losses, and then try to witness your thoughts. That's how you'll become free from them. Also, I think it's brave to express one's interest in people for love and friendship. It's not easy, and you only have the right to the effort, not to the fruits of your actions. So I would suggest in situations like these, witness your thoughts and emotions and gently move on. You did the brave thing. Everything's fine. It's okay.
रिजेक्शन एक्सेप्ट करना कायदे से ये तो कोई ट्रेनिंग का पार्ट ही नहीं है. भाई कोई लड़की आपके साथ नहीं खेलना चाह रही तो उसमें क्या खास बात है. पर एक ऐसे माहौल में जहां हजारों लोग फ्रस्ट्रेशंस के शिकार हैं, बात हो ही नहीं रही है, आप उन गिने चुने लकी लोगों में हैं कि आपकी बात हो पा रही है और उससे मना कर दिया बात करने से. जो मेरे आसपास के लठैत लोग हैं लड़के, जब वो मजाक बनाएंगे मेरा उसके बाद कि भाई मना कर दिया तेरे तुझे तो, जबकि उनसे बात आज तक नहीं हुई है, पर वो चिढ़ाएंगे.
I also find it interesting how Inder is propelled by a sense of higher duty with respect to Saru. Despite the fact that he thinks that she rejected him, he throws himself into the mission of helping her after her father throws her out of her home. Granted, he probably feels a little responsible for that, but in my opinion, he goes above and beyond what I would expect an acquaintance to do for someone else. Like getting her an apartment, furniture, food, wardrobe, etc., etc. Also, he could have asked her at any point why she turned him down. He seems to visit her every day, giving him unlimited opportunities, but he never brings it up. Because in his mind, it's done and irrelevant. She made her choice, and he, of course, respects it. He knows he expressed his feelings respectfully, so he sees no need to revisit the incident and make her talk about it. I just find that so sweet. I mean, I'm sure he's curious why she turned him down, but the fact that he doesn't ask demonstrates his discipline and dignity. Also, he could have been petty and refused to help her in the first place because he felt insulted, but I think his mind has evolved past that. Even when he and Saru spend the night together and then she texts him goodbye the next day after meeting Abhimanyu, Inder's quite upset, but he still agrees to find Saru and give her the invitation to her younger sister's wedding from her mom. He easily could have said, I kind of don't want to see her again. She broke my heart. But he's so duty-bound and selfless, which again reflects his inner strength and evolved understanding. Now let's get into that. The main things I find impressive about Inder are his empathy and dedication to selfless service. I believe historically, Indian romances have depicted female characters as being fairly selfless toward men. She tends to devote herself to his needs, putting her needs aside, assuming she has any, and assumes the bulk of emotional labor in those relationships, which allows him to open his heart and surrender a bit of his ego, which is fine, but it reinforces stereotypes about women being innate or implied caregivers and suggests to men that they aren't equipped to be as compassionate or selfless as women in relationships, which I don't think is true. Now, that's not to say male characters don't sacrifice for women they love, but their sacrifices tend to look different. They're physical and extraordinary, like getting into fights, going to war, going to prison, finding her, rescuing her, avenging her, which is all well and good. I think it shows the depth of his commitment to her. But other kinds of sacrifices in romance, like listening, tend to be relegated to women. It's a quieter act that I don't think men naturally perceive as, quote, masculine behavior, because male characters tend to demonstrate their love through grand gestures, while female characters tend to do so by caring for men emotionally and supporting their endeavors. And these trends are a function of how entertainment has subliminally gender-coded different expressions of love through the kinds of stories and character arcs written for men and women. And again, I don't begrudge male characters for expressing their love through physical sacrifices or grand gestures. I think it's really nice of them. but I believe writers have routinely prioritized these expressions in men over more regular relationship stuff, like being there for the other person or listening to them. Increasingly, I see Indian male characters exhibiting some amount of empathy and humility toward their female counterparts, which I like, but it's less common for a male character to be completely selfless and assume an equal or greater proportion of the emotional labor in the relationship. Inder, on the other hand, is a champion on both fronts. While traditional masculinity will try to convince you that empathy and sensitivity are weaknesses, Sanam Teri Kasam subtly demonstrates that these qualities are strengths. Inder is hyper-aware of Saru's pain and proactively does everything in his power to remove it. He's a problem solver, and his empathy is a form of emotional intelligence that's motivated him to serve others from a young age. Western psychology research suggests that children start exhibiting empathy as early as infancy, and our abilities get increasingly sophisticated as we age. But empathy isn't like an on and off switch, but rather a muscle that needs to be exercised, a maturation of neural connections that allow us to detect how others feel. So we can choose to exercise and thereby strengthen our empathy or let it atrophy.
दूसरों का दर्द महसूस करने की ताकत जो है ना, सैडली ये थोड़ा टाइम के साथ आती है. इससे थोड़ा प्रीमैच्योर हम कर सकते हैं सही ट्रेनिंग से. स्कूल में, घरों में थोड़ी परवरिश थोड़ी बेहतर हो तो ट्रेनिंग मिलती है.
So, gentlemen, I encourage you to strengthen your empathy by trying to see things from other people's point of view. Not only because it's the right thing to do and it makes you more self-aware, but because empathy is a leadership quality. Good leaders have tremendous empathy because it allows them to understand their constituents' needs and serve them accordingly. Inder's empathy allows him to be selfless towards Saru because he recognizes that her needs at the time outweigh his. She's in a highly vulnerable state. She wants to be reaccepted into her home, and he has the bandwidth to assist her. Now you might be thinking, is Inder really selfless? I mean, surely he's helping Saru because he likes her, right? But let's talk about this. There are plenty of on-screen and real stories of self-assured nice guys who are kind to women they're attracted to and expect they'll be rewarded. They have an ulterior motive or agenda baked into their actions. And when they don't get what they want, they get angry, feeling as though they were entitled to more, which isn't nice. This is subtle, I think. Your mindset matters. But I would argue that Inder doesn't fall into this trap. He does so much for Saru, but here's how we know he's selfless. Saru is trying to get reaccepted into her home by getting married, not to just anyone, but to someone that her father would approve of.
IIT IIM, Brahman Shastri ladka.
And the film explicitly tells us that Inder wouldn't qualify.
Shirtless, shameless scoundrel.
So it's not like Inder is helping Saru with the expectation that he's gonna change her mind and make her pick him. That won't help her get home. So I think we can safely say that Inder is helping Saru for the sole purpose of ensuring she's okay. It's a truly selfless mission because he's trying to fix her marriage with someone who isn't him, who cannot be him. He even creates a whole folder of eligible suitors and sets up appointments for her. It's just so sweet.
IIT, IIM or MIT भी है. Your dad will really love him.
So by helping Saru get settled and find a husband, Inder stands to gain nothing. And this task becomes increasingly difficult for him because he really starts to like her. But he persists because it's the right thing to do. He needs to see it out. He wants to see her safe. It's the highest priority for him. And that brings up an important discussion around introspection. Assuming it's not a life or death situation, I encourage you to check in with yourself before and while helping someone to ensure you're doing it for the right reasons. I'm not suggesting men become doormats to women, but rather go within and try to feel good about the act of helping. That in itself can feel rewarding if you let it. I want to add that I think helping Saru makes Inder feel better. I get the sense by his stagnant lifestyle that he deems his personal problems insurmountable, most notably the rift between him and his father, who refused to defend Inder at trial. But directing his energy toward helping Saru makes Inder feel useful, and in a way he's helping himself. Maybe he thinks, I might never reconnect with my dad, but so help me God, I'm going to help Saru reconnect with hers. And I think it's worth pointing out that Inder doesn't limit his acts of service to women he's interested in romantically. He's been selfless before, not to a love interest, but a maternal figure. At the end of the film, we learn that when he was 13, his uncle attacked his nanny, and she killed the uncle in self-defense. Rather than risk his nanny failing to prove her innocence in court, Inder takes the fall for the murder, for which he spends 8 years in prison. Like, oh my gosh. Sorry, did I mention he was 13 years old? So clearly, Inder has gravitated toward duty and sacrifice from a young age. He's good to the core, and I think men can aspire to have a good heart like his.
आज के बाद तुम्हें कोई विभूति आंटी नहीं बोल पाएगा।
The last thing that I want to point out about Inder is his willingness to be accountable, which again is a life skill. Traditional masculinity doesn't encourage men to apologize for their mistakes because it wants men to believe that they don't make mistakes. And also, apologizing is a form of deference and should be avoided at all costs. Quick sidebar, Sanam Teri Kasam has several rumored inspirations, most notably the 1970 novel Love Story by Eric Siegel. And there's a scene where the protagonists, Oliver and Jenny, get into a fight. Oliver hates his father, and when Jenny speaks kindly to Oliver's father on the phone, Oliver throws the phone across the room and yells at her, saying,
Get the hell out of my life!
Quote, I stood still for a second. My God, I thought, what's happening to me? I turned to look at Jenny, but she had gone. I looked round the flat for her. Her coat was still there, but she had disappeared. End quote. Oliver instantly regrets what he said and runs around town trying to find her. After many hours, he finds her on the steps of their apartment.
I forgot my key.
And before Oliver can apologize, Jenny says,
Don't. Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Which is a really famous line from this book. It's very well quoted. And I think it means when you're in a committed relationship, you have full faith in each other's love. If one of you snaps at the other, the sorry is implied. You know they don't mean it when they get angry at you. And I think that message is fine. But I like what Sanam Teri Kasam does more. In the film, Saru and Inder see Inder's dad in the street. Saru tries to tell Inder about returning the man's wallet to him, but Inder pushes her and walks away. Not his best moment. But soon after, he regrets what he did and looks everywhere for Saru, and finally finds her at a bus stop. And instead of saying,
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
Saru says,
तुम sorry हो?
हाँ।
तो then say sorry.
Inder apologizes immediately. He has no qualms about it. He knows he messed up and isn't ashamed to acknowledge it. I think men can take something positive from the idea of genuinely apologizing when you've made a mistake. It's the only way to move forward in a relationship. And notably, these two aren't even a couple at this point. They're just companions on a mission. So I think Inder's willingness to be accountable to Saru, with whom he has a nameless relationship, strengthens the point. Genuinely apologizing for your mistakes can unburden you and bring you closer to your loved ones. So I like Sanam Teri Kasam a lot, and I think Inder's a big reason for that. He's so sweet, kind, and gentle. It's the best. And I hope I've managed to communicate that these qualities are strengths and worthy of your attention, especially if you're a guy. I think men can potentially aspire to model Inder's selfless attitude and good heart. And that requires inner reflection and witnessing. But it will benefit you, such as by making you a more resilient person, in love and in life.
Thank you.
चलें?
Good luck. Bye.